Welcome back to Flashback Files, where we help students, recent grads, and young professionals reflect on how early experiences shape confidence, identity, and the way we think about the future. Today's conversation is about what it looks like to have a strong sense of direction early on and how that identity gets tested, shaped, and even refined through real world experience. My guest today is Kenya. From a young age, Kenya was often described as an old soul, someone who seemed to understand herself, her goals, and her desire to help others earlier than most. Whether was setting her sights on becoming a pediatric neurosurgeon at just 6 years of age, or getting involved in sports, leadership, and community initiatives throughout school, there's always been a clear thread of purpose in how she shows up. That sense of purpose carried into her university experience at McMaster, where she stepped into leadership roles, helped build community for incoming students, and found herself navigating both opportunity and responsibility at the same time. Along the way, experiences like traveling to the Dominican Republic for service work, taking a year to work within government, and now stepping into law school have all played a role in shaping not just what she wants to do, but who she's becoming. In this conversation, we'll talk about identity, leadership, pressure, and what it really means to have it figured out, or at least feel like you do. Kenya, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Okay, let's start things off by maybe just giving listeners a little bit of your background, who you are, what just initially comes to mind.
Of course. So, my name's Kenya. I'm currently a Western law student. I'm in my first year of law school. In the very little free time that I have, I like running, rock climbing, reading, and anything that gets me outdoors is a hobby of mine. So,
Excellent. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of the childhood, if you don't mind. From people that I won't disclose, you've been described as an old soul. When you hear that, what do you think about? What do you think that really means in terms of who you were growing up?
candidly, I think it's a very nice way of saying I was probably just a little bit nerdy. I think it probably, yeah, just means I was a little bit lame as a kid. I was definitely quieter. I don't know. I would read a book a day. I would put myself to bed. I have some like, we'll call them eclectic hobbies. But I feel like that's probably where that term comes from.
Eclectic hobbies. Can you elaborate on that?
Like gardening, stuff like that. I don't know, just feels a little like I have a huge garden, so that feels a little bit old. The reading feels a little bit old. I collect vinyls. I love thrifting, vintage markets. I'll like spend my summers sorting through. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so at 6 years of age, somehow you knew what a pediatric neurosurgeon was,
Yeah.
and you had a desire to maybe entertain that as a career. What drew you to something like that so early?
You know what? I still don't know. I also don't know why I knew what that was. I'm not sure. I feel like it's something I heard and I was like, that sounds smart. And that's kind of where I ran with that. But I do remember being really young. I would tell anybody that would listen that that was the career for me. It died as soon as I had to take chemistry in high school. It probably died a little bit before that, but we can blame high school chem. But I don't know. Don't know where that dream came from. I remember at one point it was dentist, and I have a little sister, and her I watched one of her teeth get pulled, and that dream died really quickly. So I don't know where the sciences came from, but they wrapped up pretty quickly.
It took a little bit of life experience for you to realize maybe those careers weren't for you.
Yeah, yeah,
So looking back now, do you feel like you understood yourself earlier than most kids?
I feel like I don't think so. I think I knew that I was probably really goal orientated from a young age. And I don't know if that meant that I knew myself better. I feel like at times it almost made me a little bit more confused. I feel like it made me feel a little bit different from my peers in a way that I guess didn't really know how to articulate. But yeah, I don't think I knew myself any earlier on.
Yeah, I think with goals, you're setting those things up in terms of wanting to accomplish, whereas maybe a lot of kids are just maybe more entertaining. I don't know, Pokemon. Pokemon
Hmm.
a thing back then
Still a
for you?
thing.
Yeah. Okay. So goal orientation might have been something that separated you. Where do you think your desire to help people started? Because I understand that was something a part of your journey as well.
I think probably being an older sister, as much as I don't think we got along growing up, I'm really happy with how much that has changed. But I think I walk through life now, or when I describe myself to my friends now, I'm her sister first. And I think she helps me in some ways she doesn't know. And I feel like I learned a lot attempting to help her growing up. So I think it probably definitely started at home.
How many years difference is there between you two?
Or,
4. Okay. So yeah, definitely. You were 4 when she was born, and which
yeah.
how did you view that when she was, the newborn in the family?
I was thrilled. I was thrilled to be an older sister. Everybody tells me that still. There's a really silly picture I like of when I met her for the first time, and I'm holding her, and I just have the largest, worst smile on my face, but it is really, really cute. I was told I helped out a ton. So yeah, excited to be big sister.
Cute. Awesome. So let's move forward. You started to get involved in a lot of sports, school activities, leadership opportunities. What do you think was driving you during that time when you started to get active in those different areas?
I think probably so it would have been beginning of high school when I think all of that stuff started to build up. And probably just the opportunity, like the idea of trying everything has always been really interesting. I don't know, like the idea of living life almost like a jack of all trades. Like, I think if you don't like something, at least give it a go. And I've learned along the way that you never know what's going to be really great for you and what's not going to be really great. But yeah, I think just having the opportunity and then taking it.
Awesome. And let's unpack a couple of those activities. So you were involved in rugby and track. What did each of those sports or both teach you about yourself that you couldn't learn in a classroom?
Um, I think that I'm capable of a lot more than I would have thought. I think with track, it was something my dad always wanted me to do, and growing up, like, I hated running, like, I wasn't bad at it, I just really wasn't a fan of it, and I think in my adulthood, now I run, and he'll bike with me when I do my longer runs, and it's really great bonding for us, but I feel like something it's not something that, like, I don't know how to say some people say runner's high is a thing. I maybe disagree. I think it's just it's so I don't understand the euphoria. I haven't figured that part out yet, but the idea that, like, I can set that goal and I can get there physically is just almost, like, immediately rewarding, and so I think I learned that with track. With rugby, I remember the day I came home and I told my poor mother that I was going to start rugby, for the first time, and she was petrified. But I think that taught me, a lot of resilience, a lot of, like, strength, and if you put the work into something, you can totally do it. I knew nothing about the game, how it was played, but it definitely taught me teamwork. I had great coaches, and so just that resilience piece was huge coming from rugby.
Excellent. I think in both cases, but it sounds like with track, it was more about setting out the goal and then accomplishing it, which is consistent with how you were describing yourself as a younger child.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree, and I really like that with running, that's kind of never gone away, and so it's a hobby I still enjoy, but yeah.
Cool. Were you someone who put pressure on yourself to perform or to succeed?
I think like an and or, like perform or succeed, is that
You can look at it either way. I think we could unpack it. However, whatever comes to you.
I think probably, to succeed. I feel like I'm still kind of that person. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm really good at goal setting and like knowing what I want to accomplish. And it's never really been an external pressure thing. My parents have always been good to let me run wherever the wind takes me. But I think succeeding and like wanting to see something through to fruition has been something that came, yeah, internally.
Okay, so life isn't always perfect, and I'd love to be able to say that we all accomplish 100% of our goals.
Yeah.
How did you handle moments where things didn't necessarily go your way? Maybe you didn't reach the goal that you were looking to reach.
That's a good question. Feel like, honestly, probably at first not well. I feel like there was definitely a time growing up where something didn't go my way. It was, it sounds like maybe a little bit silly, but almost difficult to conceptualize because you put all of the work in and you assume something's going to go your way, and it was just odd when it didn't. I think now I'm a lot better at it, and just realizing that sometimes there needs to be a self-reflection, sometimes it's not you. Sometimes there are things you can do better, and like learning from those mistakes. I like now that I'm older, if something's not going my way, it normally has to do with academics or work or whatever it is. And I think I've gotten a lot better at taking feedback and taking a minute to sit with that and then learning from it and moving forward. So,
Excellent. So in high school, if you thought about what success looked like for you 20 years from then, so how would you have defined success back then? And is there any difference between how you might have thought of what success looked like back then to what you see success looking like today?
yeah, I think when I was in high school and I let the science dreams die, that's when the law school dream began. So I knew, I would say high school me probably thought success 20 years down the road was definitely in the legal sphere. I was really interested in, I still am, but really interested in politics. I used to joke that I'd run one day. So probably something along the lines of that. Lots of work, lots of advocacy. I think politics definitely would have been how I pictured success 20 years ago. So something along the lines of that. And I think now I definitely view success with more of a balance. I find the work that I'm beginning to do and hopefully have an opportunity to do in the future really engaging and interesting. But then balancing that with some of my other interests. Traveling has been huge and had a huge impact on my life. Some of my friends and just like the relationships you kind of build along the way. So I think success has definitely painted a fuller picture. In high school, if you define success, it would have only had anything to do with what I was going to do career wise. And I think just opening up different avenues as I grow, it's been cool.
Well put. I think many people can relate to that. I can personally relate to that in terms of my high school definition of success
Mhm.
in the future. So you talked about travel. One of the areas that you've gone to was Dominican Republic for missionary work. What made you say yes to that opportunity?
Yeah. I think at the time, it was a mix of it being a really great opportunity to help people and then the opportunity to travel at that age. When I was in high school, I just didn't have the opportunity to travel a lot growing up. And so jumping on that was really interesting. And then ironically, the one place I had been was the Dominican Republic. So I'd seen the vacation side of it. And it was a program that had run at my high school for a long time where they continued to return to the same community to do different projects. So it was kind of like a really well established volunteer project. And yeah, so I think getting into that opportunity was interesting.
And that's an interesting perspective that you said you had previously visited it from a tourist
Mhm.
perspective. Can you talk about the differences, the nuances between what you saw as a tourist versus what you saw with the missionary work?
Yeah. So when we went on vacation, it was a family vacation. And so you're in Punta Cana, you're on the beach. It's your classic all inclusive. It's a great weekend for the family. And then when I did the work, we had flown in um, to a smaller area and we weren't coastal. We flew in, stayed somewhere for the night, and then drove for pretty much half a day into the mountains. And it's really night and day. The people that you meet, the town, obviously, like we were there for the purpose of doing work. But I would say probably the biggest difference would have been the people. Everybody in the area, like, of course, you're on a resort. So that the point is to be welcoming and have a good time. But there was just a different authenticity to these people that are kind of welcoming you into their homes. Yeah, no, it was a great experience. I hope that answered your question. I feel like I rambled a little.
It does. I came away with a sense of more of a grounded experience.
Yeah.
Authenticity you mentioned, but obviously the country or like the resort they're at puts their best foot forward in terms of presentation, whereas you got a behind the scenes look in terms of what the experiences might look like in the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there a moment during that trip on the missionary side of things that really stayed with you, like a specific moment that took place?
Hmm. I don't know if a moment is maybe the best way to describe it. There were definitely people. I remember there was a kid, Alvin. He was adorable, really young. and he would come back to the house we were staying at, like, every day, same time in the morning, just, like, greet us, have fun, that kind of thing. I remember the mayor's son of the town learned English from watching Grey's Anatomy, and I remember thinking how ridiculously cool that was and incredibly impressive. I think his name was Daniel, if I'm remembering that right. Um, there was one day where it was so hot, the sun was absolutely ridiculous, and I remember me and, like, all of my, like, peers were exhausted, just taken aback, and some of the gentlemen that were helping us and working with us just weren't even phased, and I remember thinking, like, "This everyday hard, like, or this really impossibly hard for me is their everyday," and I remember thinking about how, I don't know, contrast that was to my but I think a moment that really sticks with me was when I got back home. I had slept pretty much for 12 hours after the fact, and I had woken up, and Mom's like, "What do you want for dinner?" And whatever I had requested, we went to the grocery store, and I really didn't realize how much it resonated with me, but we weren't allowed to share food with any of the kids because of where we were. Whatever we had for the week was whatever we had, and somebody had come and cooked for us, and it was just very limited in that way, and so we weren't allowed to share. And when me and my mom had gone to the grocery store that day, she was just casually, like, putting things in the cart in, like, the produce aisle, and I started bawling, crying, and I think it just hit me how much choice and how much access we had, and that really stuck with me. I didn't expect it to hit me like that, and I remember I left. I like, "You can go," and I went and sat in the car, and I kinda laughed at the fact that I was crying, probably because I was a little embarrassed, but I remember looking at her and thinking, "There's just so much food here," and that really hit me, I think.
Actually, you just helped me answer the following question. I was going to ask how did that experience shape the way you see your own life or opportunities? Is there anything you might want to add to that?
I think, it definitely left me with the perspective that I don't wanna minimize, everybody has their stuff and, like, problems, but it definitely does make you think about, like, the different ways people live their lives and what's hard to different people. Yeah, I don't know, I think it shaped, like, kind of an understanding of everybody has a different path and then everybody has a different journey, and your easy is somebody else's impossible and vice versa, and I don't know, it's just really eye-opening to see how some people live their lives.
What a great perspective to gain before you went into this was before university, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it really humanizes things in your approach to maybe the stresses of post-secondary even in terms of
yeah,
yeah. So at McMaster, you stepped into leadership roles like Blue Crew and Golden Key. What
mhm.
pushed you to take that on?
Well, Golden Key was just an awesome opportunity because I was invited to join. It's an honor society, and McMaster has a chapter. And so Golden Key I wanted to get involved with because all of my previous university involvement was really restrained to my faculty. So it was kind of just an opportunity to branch out. But Blue Crew I'd focus on because it was definitely like the highlight of my undergraduate experience. But it was something I joined my first year as just a general rep. And I joined to push myself out of my comfort zone. I started McMaster during COVID, so my first year was completely online. And then building friends and friendships and meeting people after that, just it feels a little awkward. And so I had my people, but I wanted to reach out more. And so I was in my third year and I signed up and interviewed and applied to be a general rep. And I had nobody doing it with me. And I had no friends to like kind of lean on there. And so you just deep dive. And then you're in this position where you're helping out incoming students. And then in my last year, I was kind of inspired to sign up to be in charge. And I think that was just because of what it gave to me, I wanted to give to other people. I met one of my best friends in that, and I got some of my other friends involved before I left. But yeah, I think just getting myself outside of my comfort zone was my first initial reason for joining. And then wanting to give other people the experience I had was what kept me in it.
Awesome. So there is a bit of a leadership take in terms of you're helping people that are just coming into post-secondary with Blue Crew, right? So technically they're around being your peers. When you think about taking on, let's say, a leadership role in that capacity, and these individuals are maybe 1, 2 years younger than you, what is that dynamic like? Because it can be tough leading your peers at times. Were there any kind of aha moments or just experiences that you had where you realized, this is interesting in terms of leading peers?
Yeah. So I think the way it's set up is so when I was in my last year and I was a planner, I worked with two other planners. And then so there's the group of the three of us. And then under us, there's 110 reps. So we had 110 volunteers. We interviewed them, trained them, our volunteers. And then we brought in, I think, 1,200 social science students that year. So, like, that was our support system. So it was insane. And everybody, like you mentioned, is relatively the same age. So I think first leading our reps, like our volunteers, ironically, I can see why there would be the idea that sometimes the dynamic would be off. But honestly, I think because they understand, we spend our summers planning the events and hiring them and doing all of that, and I think because they recognize the amount of work that goes into it and how much you want the week to be good, they match you in that, and so there was honestly never ever any problems. It was an amazing support system, and then with the undergraduate students that are coming in, I think like a haha moment is, you kind of realize how much you've grown in a short period of time when you see beginning you starting out and you meet all of these students and they had all the same fears and all the same worries and all the same interests, and then you get to tell them it's going to be okay and it's going to be awesome and they're going to meet people and their worries are going to dissipate, so it was a great time.
Cool. So I hear like the instant opportunity of relatability, like you were just in that, you can put yourself in their shoes. And then you probably realize really quickly you have something of value to guide these individuals through. Like you just went through it and you're on the other end. So just helping them walk through their first year that way. Am I
Yeah,
understanding that correctly?
yeah.
Okay. In general, taking on those, did you find that positively contributing to just your overall sense of confidence and competence in general?
Yeah, I think when I first got into the role, of, like, kind of being in charge, I definitely at different times thought there were better people for it. Like I said, I came in the year before not knowing anybody and being a little bit, like, anxious about that, and there are definitely people that did it their whole time through, and just had really great experience in, like, that aspect, and so I think it built my confidence in being sure of myself and, like, what I, like, bring to the table when it comes to, like, the work side of things. So I think I did all of our finances and we had like the school gives you a pretty fun budget for the week. And so I was like we would always joke that I was our finance bro and like I did all of our organizational stuff and even like being that person that somebody feels comfortable to come and talk to when like they have a problem. Like I remember I had a rep come and talk to me about something and I was really taken back that they trusted me enough to come to me, like, that felt really good towards the end. So I think it built my confidence and, like, just being a little bit more sure of myself and, like, trusting the work you put into things and trusting the outcome, so yeah.
Nice. So let's fast forward a little bit. You took a year off before law school. And so I understand that you made the decision that you wanted to pursue law in high school.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you go and you did poli sci.
Mhm.
Okay. And then you took a year off before law school. What led you to make that decision?
Because I decided I did not want to do lawn. I think we talked about me being really good at goal setting, at a young age, and I think the detriment that comes with being really sure of yourself sometimes is it gets it's nerve-wracking when, like, you're end of the goal and you've, like, told so many people this is what you're gonna do, and then when you feel uncertainty, like, it's a really hard to come to terms with that, and so I was in my 3rd year, and that's when you apply, and I remember I had a lot of friends applying, and they were going through their applications, and I would have been interviewing reps at the time. So I would have 5 hours of interviews, I'd go to a 3-hour class, and I'd go back and I was doing everything because I wanted to do everything, and I just felt really burnt out, and I had a professor at the time that had practiced law and left law and just talked about his up and downs in that very candidly. And in my 3rd year, when it came to applying, I just was like, I don't actually know if this is for me anymore. And so I took the year because I wasn't comfortable applying at the time when applications came through. And then it was actually really great because that same professor is probably the reason I changed my mind. I took more classes with them in my 4th year and I really liked some of the research I was doing and some of the the academic stuff and I realized like a lot of people didn't like the one class. And he was like, if you like this class, then you probably would like law school because he frames it that way. And I was like, okay, maybe I do like this and maybe I can do it. So I think it was just a little bit of reassurance that was needed that I was comfortable in the area I was going to spend some more time in.
This is more of a follow-up to like your frame of mind. You were saying conducting interviews and that sort of thing. So there was some exhaustion. Maybe did you feel like maybe they were looking back, there was a lack of clarity based on how you might have been feeling with the workload that you had going on in your life?
Yeah, I think, I talk about it a lot now when I talk to students that are thinking about law, like, if they reach out to me. I start with the fact that I, in my undergrad, wanted to do everything, and that's really awesome, except for when it comes at a detriment to yourself, and so time management, I'm really good at time management because I could check all of the boxes, but it didn't come without drawbacks like me. So I'd make sure that everything was getting done, but the cost was just normally my sleep or keeping up with things and my friends and that kind of a thing. So yeah, I think I was probably definitely burnt out at the time and I think I wanted the break. So I took the year.
You mentioned sleep, time with friends, anything else under the self-care umbrella that you might utilize to just make sure that you're creating space between the chaos of life and your self-care?
Yeah, I think something that was huge is I talked about running a little bit before, but like more recently I got into it again and now I run when I need kind of that mental health break. I have a really great support system, so friends are really good. Trying new hobbies is always fun, but yeah, just something to kind of quiet and take a moment for yourself, whatever that looks like. But I wasn't working in time for that, and I think it's definitely something I prioritize more now.
Cool. So you worked with the Ministry of Sport.
Yes.
What did that experience open your eyes to?
That was really great. I ended up there because I worked in my minister's MPP office while I was in my last few years at Mac. So it was a really great opportunity. Um, and it opened my eyes, I think, to the importance of mentorship, good mentorship, and being willing to ask when you want to try new things. I had a really great opportunity to, because I had really great bosses and really great mentors, to, if I wanted to try something, they'd let me do that. And it's not like that in every space, in any field. And I just feel like because I was at such an entry level position with the opportunity to try new things, I learned a lot about myself and about the work. And it was good for shaping, I think, where I want to go next.
So it gave you more clarity rather than create more questions. Sometimes if you have a lot of experiences and you're enjoying multiple things, it might be like, oh, it's almost like similar to your undergrad experience where you want to do everything. Somehow it created a lane for you where you were just getting a better sense of who you are.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. I think it created clarity in, especially going into law school. There's a lot of like fear with like pursuing a professional degree. And I think more than anything, it showed me that if law wasn't going to be for me, it was okay because I had all of these interests and they do work out on the other side. And then it also created questions about like where I wanted to go with law or if I preferred politics over law and just career questions. But I really do reminisce on the experience in nothing but a positive way.
Okay, so you raise a good point about I hear maybe keeping that eggs in one basket mentalities far away. So what you're saying is I want to pursue law. If I don't make it for whatever reason, I do know all of these things about myself. Would you say that's kind of the way that you would summarize it? Like just not putting your eggs in one basket, not making law your identity in its fullest.
Hmm.
So if I were to ask you, like, what else is there about Kenya that we should know about outside of pursuing law?
Yeah, I would. That's a great question. I would say probably some stuff I've already said. I would say I love to travel. I have so many goals when it comes to that stuff. I'd love to see every province. Me and my best friend, we've done a country every year for the last couple of years, and that's been amazing. I'd say I love camping and hiking, gardening, yeah, the outdoors, rock climbing. I'd probably say I want to learn a new creative outlet as something I'd love to tap into this year. I didn't get that gene from my mom. My sister definitely did. So I'd love to explore that a little bit more. But yeah, I think always expanding, always trying new things.
Got it. Okay, cool. Now that you're in law school, doing big things out there, what's the biggest adjustment that you've had to make?
Hmm. Academically, I'd probably say the workload and being willing to not know something, and learn from that and be okay with that. I feel like law school's a big learning curve from undergrad, and you might think you have it all figured out, and there will be a lot of humbling times where you just don't. And being okay to sit in that discomfort is a lesson that I think is important to learn early on and just to build from there. I think personally, it's important to build support systems around you and be able to be one for people that need one. It's the first time I've lived away from home. I lived at home when I did my undergrad. And so it's definitely been different when I need kind of that support, not being around family. But I think I've built a really great support system here. So if you want a village, be a villager and just reach out and make sure you have community like that. But yeah.
If you put yourself back to the first couple of weeks where you realized the adjustment moving from home to another city, what were a few of the things that you did to become a villager?
I think I was actually really like, I shouldn't say actually, I was probably like everybody else, very anxious about the idea of coming. I know, like I came in knowing nobody in the program. I had taken the year off, so nobody like in my years also coming to Western. So there were a lot of nerves, and I think I just deep dived. One of the things I learned from a mentor at the ministry was it just the repetition of like you can do hard things. People have always been a little bit challenging to me just personally, and so I was really nervous about probably the people aspect of it all more than the academic side of it all. And I had a really great mentor, and she just the worst thing somebody's ever going to tell you is no, like no thanks. And so I think just walking into new relationships with that mentality, I spent the first week they do orientation for us, so I was on the receiving end of it this time, and I deep dived in everything. I like went to everything. I met my professors early. I met the friends that I talk to now early and at those events. So just being willing to give it a try and step outside of your comfort zone.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's good advice. I've been there before, so it's interesting to hear somebody else's take. I didn't do that stuff, by the way, and I'm sure you're having a much better time than I did.
That's so funny.
So do you feel like you're on the path you always imagined, or has it evolved? Maybe the type of law that you were interested in practicing when you started this journey versus maybe any pivots that you've made along the way and what you might be considering today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's definitely changed, but because one thing I've learned while being in law school is like you never know what you don't know. I think that comes with being in law school. I think it comes with being a first generation student. I feel like every day I'm learning something new that I didn't know before. And so I think coming into law school, I really was dead set on practicing criminal defense. And I think it's a mix of what you see the most of. And then it's kind of, at least for me, it was the only way I really saw advocacy before law school. And so now sitting through law school, you get a different picture of what private law looks like and what certain things you actually get to do in practice. You get a different picture of the challenges of being in different, like certain fields versus not. And so I still definitely don't know what type of law I want to practice, but I've come to learn that, like academically, I do really enjoy different aspects of private law for different reasons. And then you also see the way like certain legal careers are painted, whether that's media or through like conversation. And I think law school has really been eye opening to there's definitely a big difference between suits in the real world.
Okay, I'm going to latch on to something you mentioned because I'm sure many listeners can identify with this. First generation student.
Mhm.
Can you talk to us about that? First, let's explain it to people. I'll give you the opportunity to define it, but then also maybe share with us what that experience is like in terms of university the finances that come along with university and justifying the degree, and then taking it to another level in terms of graduate school?
Yeah. So, first generation student is somebody that, in my definition, your parents or your parents' parents, you're the first person in your family to pursue post secondary school. And so, for me, neither of my parents went to post secondary school. And so, navigating that journey, nothing but supported and proud. But there were definitely questions that you had to look for to be answered elsewhere. And so you don't realize how hard that is in hindsight or like thinking about it. You just, well, you apply and you go and all of the things. But in undergrad specifically, I remember there were a lot of times where like your peers just know things. It's like a secret code. Like they just know things that you don't, and how that can be frustrating. And so walking through undergrad, it's almost kind of like you're like your own like guidance counselor, I want to say in a way. Like you have to make the effort to learn it all, and you have to ask what feels like a silly question at the time. It was great because a lot of the times I had friends who we were just really good at being candid with each other and helping each other out along the way, but definitely a learning curve in undergrad. And then in law school, I can't call my parents to like look over my memo because they're not lawyers. And so there's that gap too that comes again because you once again don't know what you don't know, and you don't know the language, and I guess that just aspect of the career that some people are like raised around. And so it definitely creates a unique learning opportunity, and it has its own challenges. Wouldn't change it for the world, obviously, but yeah, it's been interesting to navigate.
Okay, you can pass on this question if you don't want to answer it, but based on the fact that you're first generation student, do you feel pressure to really want to make your parents proud and follow through on all of the goals and dreams that you've had for for yourself and maybe what your parents had for you?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think I'm really lucky in that I know a lot of people might have a different experience with parental pressure, but my parents have truly always been whatever your heart desires, and take it there. And I feel like specifically with my dad growing up, he was definitely more of like the academic pressure, like growing up. And I think now that I've stepped into post secondary, he's really switched his narrative in a way where he knows that I'll put the pressure on myself. He knows I want to succeed. And so now he approaches things like, it's okay if you don't, which can sound kind of daunting, but sometimes is just really needed to hear. Like, you really need to hear that it's okay, that if you change your mind or if something doesn't go your way, like they're still there. They're still going to be proud. They still are proud. So I think there's definitely the pressure to succeed and like the pressure to follow through. And I took the year off and I've gone back and forth and all of that. But I think from them, they at the end of the day, like truly just want to see me be happy with whatever I choose to do. And if that's law, they're thrilled that it's law. But if it's not, it's nice to know that they're okay with it not being law if it's not.
That's incredible because I mean, when we talk about pressure, I get a sense that it's more driven from inside. Like you're probably holding yourself to this high standard rather than your parents. But it sounds like an excellent dynamic there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you've traveled quite a bit: Portugal, Switzerland, Germany. What is travel in general? So outside of DR, taught you about yourself? So you mentioned one country a year with your friend.
Just for the last couple years. So
Okay.
my best friend and me, we both took a year off. And everybody else was going to do master's programs and law school and all the things, and we were both not. And so we wanted something to look forward to. So we booked a trip. And so we did Portugal, and we did all of Portugal, it felt like. And then this last summer we did Switzerland and Germany, which was awesome. But in terms of teaching me something about myself, I feel like I'm very type A. I feel like that's probably definitely come across. And there's a plan for everything. And I think travel has taught me it's okay if the plan doesn't go your way. We are the type of, she's also very type A, and we'll have a full itinerary and we'll have the lists and the activities packed and all of the things to do and like the back to back timeline. And I get this isn't vacation for other people, but this is like prime vacation for me. But it definitely doesn't always work out like that. There's always a kink along the road. There's always something that goes wrong. And being able to take a deep breath in those moments, especially when you're like so far away from everything that's comfortable, can be a little bit scary, but like I feel like that's important. It's also introduced me to so many amazing people and just like different perspectives. And I think it's taught me how, I want to say, like, almost to talk to anybody. I feel like that's something that definitely, like, high school me would have been petrified of doing. The conversation with the stranger thing just always felt really daunting. But people are really, really cool, and most people want to be your friend. And yeah, traveling has been fun.
Excellent. Type A. Latching onto that for a second, with law school, I'm sure you come across maybe a couple of type A personalities, I would
A
imagine. Just a group work come up?
little bit, yeah.
Okay. So, can you help us understand what group work looks like in that setting and how you navigate that being maybe a self-professed type A personality yourself?
Yeah. Maybe that's another good thing that I've learned somewhere along the way, but being okay with letting go of the reins every once in a while is probably a good life lesson that everybody should take at one point. But group work when you're surrounded by everybody else that's just as type A as you is probably worse than if you were just able to take the reins. So law school has definitely taught me teamwork in new ways. I find in spaces like that, some really good advice I've been given from a previous boss is just everybody wants to be heard. And so if you give them a moment to be heard, that's generally what people are looking for. Um, so yeah, group work has learning curve, but nothing impossible. At the end of the day, I think we're in a space where everybody wants to get the thing done and everybody wants the good grade. So the end goal is already in sight. And like that's really easy to work with. I think managing different personalities is a life skill that I learned probably through Blue Crew, just having so many volunteers at the same time and that being demanding. But yeah, it's been fun. I don't know, I think it sets you up probably decently well with for the real world and what everybody's like, but good.
Absolutely. Uh, I want you to consider your high school self for a second. If you were to just look back, just seeing where you are today and looking back at where you might have been, let's paint the picture where you might have been stressing out in grade 12 with exams. If you could look back at that version of Kenya, what would you say to her? Think about maybe
Relax.
some current. Oh, okay. So you already know.
Relax.
Relax.
And I say it to people now. I've been asked a few times from undergrad students normally, they've been stopped. You're in law school. And then, oh, what did you do to get there? Stop, take deep breaths, enjoy the journey, and be a person is like my number one piece of advice. I think, especially with people that want to be like go into the law field, there's a lot of pressure with admissions. And so whenever somebody asks me for advice about that, especially, I say be a person first. Everybody knows you can do the work at a certain point. It's whether or not we wanna work with you. It, like, kind of becomes, are you the person that I want to do the group project with? Are you the person that I can relate to? And so I feel like being a person outside of your end goal sometimes is really important. But sorry, to your point about the high school student, I think I definitely stressed myself out about so many things that in hindsight, I could have just definitely relaxed a little bit more and enjoyed the journey a little bit more. So stop and smell the roses, high school me.
Yeah, and you had roses maybe in your backyard with this garden. What's something you're still figuring out right now for yourself?
Um, hmm, I'm still figuring out. Probably to let go of some of the internal pressure, I feel like is something I'm still like learning to manage. I definitely want to obviously see myself succeed. And I feel like I put a lot of pressure on myself to perform academically. And sometimes it feels really, really high stakes, but nothing's ever on fire. And if it is, call the fire department, is something one of my old mentors used to say. And I feel like sometimes I need to learn that it's going to be okay if it's not okay. And like, it's life.
That's great advice, the fire and the fire department, because I think I'm guilty of it too. You just sit and stew and worry and get in this frame of mind when you leave it to yourself versus just having a chat with somebody. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be actually maybe a mental health professional, depending on the scope and scale
Mhm.
of your situation. But you're right, there are resources out there, and you don't need to walk this journey on your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you define confidence at this stage of your life?
Hmm. For me, I think confidence comes probably. In my day-to-day life now as a student, I think confidence comes from my understanding. So just being confident in the material or in the presentation or in the work that I'm doing. I think defined, it probably just also means being a like that kind of same principle, like being okay if it's not okay. I feel like we're in circumstances quite a bit where we're cold called or we're put on the spot. And you have to trust yourself and you have to trust that if you don't know it, like the world doesn't end. So I think confidence kind of just comes with some self reassurance. I hope that answered your question.
Yep, it does. This concludes the formal questions. This may give you peace of mind that we're going into the lightning round, or it might be even more stressful because it's you need to answer these lightning quick.
Okay.
Are you up for it?
Yeah. Let's give it a go.
Okay. Okay. One word that describes who you were at 10.
Curiosity. Curious.
One word that describes who you are right now.
Mm, intentional.
What's a book or idea that's changed how you think?
I love this one. I Who Have Never Known Men, Jacqueline Hartman. Great book.
Okay. One thing law school is already teaching you about yourself.
I can do hard things. It's like a self mantra.
Got it. What's something people assume about you that isn't actually true?
Um, Probably that I have it a lot more figured out than I do. I feel like I come off very like hold myself a little high strung.
So maybe almost like a, what is it? Is it a duck that looks chill above the water but is
Yeah,
kicking
flail.
underneath?
That's a great analogy. I like that.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning.
Okay. Audiobook or like a reader?
Physical. And like it has to be physical too. I hate reading on the screen. Not for me.
Okay, great. That's where we'll end it, Kenya.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much for taking the time. I know you're very busy with exams and all of that, but you graciously participated in this with what? I think it was less than a week's notice. I'm not even sure, but I appreciate you stepping up. There's a lot for us to digest here and really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun. No problem at all. It was great.
Okay, that wraps up my chat with Kenya. Here are a few themes that stood out to me from our discussion. The first is that having direction early in life does not mean you have everything figured out. Kenya came across as someone who was always thoughtful, driven, and intentional. From being described as an old soul as a kid to setting big goals early to pursuing leadership opportunities in high school and in university, there was clearly always a strong internal compass there. But what I appreciated about her honesty is that she made it clear that being goal oriented didn't automatically mean she knew herself better than everyone else. In some ways, it actually created pressure, uncertainty, and moments where she had to reevaluate who she was outside of the plan. Another big theme was the tension between ambition and balance. Kenya talked openly about how much of her pressure came from within. She's someone who naturally wants to do things well, follow through, and make the most of opportunities. But you could also hear the growth in how she now defines success. Earlier on, success was tied much more tightly to career and accomplishment. Now it includes relationships, travel, being outdoors, community, and creating a fuller life beyond achievement alone. I think that's such an important shift for young people to hear, especially those who are used to measuring themselves only by what they produce. A third theme that stood out was how much perspective can reshape a person. Her experience in the Dominican Republic clearly left a lasting imprint on how she sees access, privilege, and the different realities people live with. The moment she described coming home, standing in a grocery store and being overwhelmed by how much choice and abundance she had, that was powerful. It showed that growth doesn't only come from achievement. Sometimes it comes from being confronted with a reality bigger than your own and letting that reality deepen your empathy. We also heard a lot about leadership through service and reliability. Whether it was Blue Crew, Golden Key, or helping first year students navigate the transition into university, Kenya's leadership style didn't come across as performative or authoritative. It came across as grounding. She knew what it felt like to be uncertain, to start something new, to walk into unfamiliar places without knowing anyone. And because of that, she was able to lead from a place of understanding. That kind of leadership tends to leave a lasting impact because it's built on empathy, not ego. And finally, I think one of the strongest themes from the episode was learning how to be a whole person, not just a high achiever. Kenya spoke really thoughtfully about being a first generation student, about the pressure of pursuing law, about moving away from home, and about the discomfort of not always knowing the answer. But over and over again, she kept coming back to something deeper: the importance of being a person first, not just someone chasing the next credential, the next performance marker, or the next title, but someone building a life, building relationships, building perspective, and learning to let go of the idea that worth is tied only to achievement. There's a quiet maturity in the way Kenya sees the world. But what I think made this conversation meaningful is that she didn't present herself as someone who has it all figured out. She presented herself as someone who is still learning, still stretching, still managing pressure, and still becoming. And honestly, that may be the most relatable part of her story. Kenya, thank you for joining me. There was a lot of honesty and perspective and thoughtfulness in this conversation. And I know listeners, especially students, recent grads, and young professionals, are going to take a lot from it. And to everyone listening, thank you once again for being here. This is Flashback Files, where we continue to reflect on how early experiences shape confidence, identity, and the way we think about the future. We'll see you on the next one.